Hi guys, this is Paul Konchesky and you're listening to the Fulham Focus podcast. Enjoy.
Fulham.
Hello, welcome to the Fulham Focus podcast. My name's Matt Boisclair, and another evening of disastrous defending from Fulham at the Cottage meant that the game was over before it really began against Aston Villa. It's going to be a long-ass season to watch again, isn't it? Joining me to look back over the game, I've got a couple of Sunday League centre-halves who are well-versed at the art of crap defending. Ash said Colts were 1-0 down when this guy came off the bench to help his side out at the back. The opposition put his side under relentless pressure, but the Colts managed to hold out for a narrow 9-1 defeat. Well, Oakley, did you have your boots on the wrong feet, or is watching Fulham having an adverse effect on your game?
Definitely Fulham. Definitely Fulham. I mean, after watching that today, I don't really think I will take any blame for that. No way. Not a chance.
It's depressing all round at the moment, isn't it? There's certainly no defence for Saints FC of Scarborough as well, literally, as they lost a whopping 15-0 on Sunday. Although this boy seems proud, as the score could apparently have been a lot more. With this guy in the side, though, they were lucky to get nil. It's Ben Robinson. Good evening, mate. How are you?
Hi, mate. How you doing?
I've been better. That was pretty dire tonight, wasn't it, again?
Oh, yeah. It's getting worse, I think, each week.
I just one of the guys just posted into the team chat as well that Paddy Power are paying out on Fulham to be relegated already. Utterly, utterly ridiculous. Bonkers. 3 games in. God, what's gone wrong? Anyway, let's keep this brief and get it over with.
Fulham.
So the team was all changed again. There was no place in the squad for Harrison Reed at all. Kearney lined up alongside Anguissa in midfield with Bobby Reed and Cav playing either side of Mitra up front. Meanwhile, we started with an unusual back three of Tim Ream, Michael Hector and Dennis Adoy. Initial thoughts, Will?
I mean, I know Bobby Reed did well against Leeds. I still think he's rubbish. Ream, you know, it's been great for the club, but again, it's just not Premier League quality, really. Same as Adoy. It all comes down to the centre-backs for me, the fact that, you know, we haven't signed anyone because, you know, I look at that team and I think that is, the defence, that is the best we've got. And that's shambolic, really, that Adoy and Ream and Hector, who hasn't been great so far, but hopefully he will find his feet, that Adoy and Ream are 2 of the best centre-backs in the club for a Premier League side. No, that can't be happening. Midfield-wise, I was surprised that we only went for 2 centre-mids in Kearney and Anguissa, but I think I was happy with both of them to start in. I was surprised about Harrison Reed. I'm guessing he might have a bit of a knock because he wasn't on the bench at all either. Let's hope that it's not kind of, you know, long-term like it was last season, but I'm sure it'll be all right. I hope it will be anyway.
And Ben, I think in terms of 3 at the back, it seems to be numbers over quality, doesn't it? I mean, you know, Will's just said Tim Ream and Dennis Adoy, just, you know, they're not Premier League defenders. Michael Hector, the jury's still out. But if in doubt, just throw them all on and hope for the best.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense, to be fair. We've been playing 4 at the back for the last, 2-3 seasons. And suddenly in a game which, I know it's early in the season, but you've got to say it's one of the games you need to be getting something from. Because they're a team that's going to be there or thereabouts with us, bottom half at the table. So you need to be going out there and giving them at least a trying the keeper out a few times and making them work. And we looked hopeless. I mean, like Will said about lack of Premier League quality, you look through the lineup, the keeper, to be fair, Areola, we don't know enough about him. He's only let in 7 goals in 2 games, but I don't think that's his fault. Tete, no experience in the Premier League. Hector, no experience in the Premier League. Adoy, no experience in the Premier League. Well, he has. The season he went down with us. The same as Ream and Mitrovic and Kearney. Half those players, either Premier League teams got rid of them to us in the Championship and we're trying to use them again in the Premier League, or they came up with us and then we're not good enough and we came straight back down. It's such a weird thing to do, is change to 5 at the back in such an important game. I don't really understand what Parker's doing.
I mean, we're going to talk about the mistakes as we go through, but just really quickly, I think Tony Khan's going to come in for a lot of stick here because we haven't yet signed a centre-half. But there's no doubt that he's trying to get a centre-half in. I don't know if either of you saw that interview that he did on the official website a couple of days ago, where he's spoken about, deals are falling through, or some player that he wanted to get in on a free didn't happen, or somebody ended up getting COVID. So they didn't join. And then, of course, the Marlon one today where there was an issue with the medical, whatever that was. So he is trying, but the more these games go on and the worse we're doing, which central defender worth any salt at all is going to look at that defending and think, I want to go and play for that team? No one's going to want to come. And the more this goes on, the worse it's going to be.
Yeah, I think that is a bit of an issue because, like you say, I'm sure Tony Khan's trying, and I watched the interview as well, and he did seem really genuine about how he was trying to get a centre-back in. But we really did need to try and get one in earlier on in the window. Obviously, like you say, there's nothing he can do about players failing medicals and COVID and things like that. But even some sort of emergency loan or something, he must feel maybe hard done by because of the fact that fans are having to go at him and it's not entirely his fault. But he also might feel like he's made a mistake in not bringing a centre-back in sooner because, like you say, a lot of the blame has been going to him. Whether it's deserved or not, in my opinion, it's understandable that the blame has gone to him. I'm sure we will get a centre-back in. If not, we're in even more trouble than we thought we would be. But yeah, we'll have to see.
Well, let's pick apart the mistakes then. So, same old story, inside 4 minutes, a run from deep from Grealish, some ball watching from our defenders, and the ball's in the back of the net. Ben, talk me through your thoughts on this goal.
I think it really shows that lack of experience. And so when we come up against quality players, we just can't defend against them. We seem to start slow. This season alone, we've conceded in the 4th, 6th, 8th, 48th, 49th, and the 50th minute. There's no excuses for that, to come out and not start for the first 5 minutes. And some of the defending that's been going on, especially after our first goal, you've got to say, is it the players that aren't good enough, or is it the coach that's not good enough, or is it the fact that it's both? No Premier League experience in either management or players, and that's where we're just getting caught out all the time.
For me, I've said a few times on the podcast over the years that all I'm interested in with Fulham, I don't care about being in the Premier League. I just want a team that I'm proud of. And tonight, I'm not proud. I'm not proud of defenders. I don't care that players make mistakes. That happens. Everyone makes mistakes from time to time. And I don't even really care that they're not good enough for this level because, everybody's got a ceiling. And once you hit that ceiling, then that's that. But what I do care about is players just not concentrating. Adoy wasn't concentrating. He had no idea that Grealish was coming over his shoulder for that first goal, even though he looked across and saw him a few seconds earlier. And then the second goal as well, he was diabolical for the second goal. Will, he stood there and watched Ollie Watkins make a run in front of him. By the time he'd realised it was too late, Grealish got the ball, squared it, and Hourihane tapped it in the back of the net, 2-0. What were your thoughts on the second goal, Will?
Yeah, like you say, it's embarrassing. No team should just be letting the opposition pass the ball round in their own box. That's kind of ridiculous. They played one pass in and literally one slight tap, and he's got a whole goal to aim at. And I think, like you were saying about Areola, Ben, it's kind of hard to judge because he's just been that's an impossible save. Really, he could have gone anywhere. It's embarrassing from the defence. Like you say, players sometimes aren't good enough. And at the moment, without any other centre-backs, we're going to have to play players that aren't good enough. But they just don't seem like they're trying. They don't seem like they know what they're doing. And I don't think it's necessarily all about pure skill. I think the training, how do they not know what to do in that situation? That's such a basic situation. Someone in the box with the ball holding a defender off and another one running into the box. Surely that's so basic to defend against. That's what they come up against every day in the league and something they should go through in training. But it just seemed like no one knew what they were doing. No one knew where to stand. No one knew what the other centre-back was going to do, whether they were going to step out or stay. They just don't know what the other one's going to do, which doesn't help because none of them are clearly filled with confidence.
Well, before the break, Kenny Tete, arguably our best player in the first half, went off injured and was replaced by Abubakar Kamara. It's just our luck in this game that our best player goes off injured. I think had we gone in at 0-0 at half-time, then we probably wouldn't have said we played particularly badly, because I thought generally, aside from the mistakes for the goals, I thought we looked all right and we were creating chances. But the fact of the matter is, we were 2-0 down because of 2 defensive laps. Ben, who do you blame? Do you blame the players, the individuals? Do you blame Scott Parker? Or do you blame the chairman and Tony?
Well, I think everyone at the club has got to take a piece of the blame, because no one player on that pitch tonight played well enough. The manager wasn't good enough. Tony Khan's not done well enough getting people in. It just seems everyone's not quite doing enough to keep us up at the moment. And the longer it goes on, like someone said earlier, I'm not sure who said it, but about the longer it goes on, the less likely we are to get better players in. You know, what player is going to come to Fulham that's going to help keep us up? That is, 5 games in, we've lost all 5 and we've conceded 16 goals. What player is going to say, yeah, do you know what, I'll give it a go? Because if they're good enough to keep us up, they're not going to be interested in something like that. And we just look so unthreatening at the moment. And I feel sorry for players like Mitrovic, who's just isolated, got very little around him. But there's just, someone's got to step up. And Tom Cairney, I don't think he's captain enough to say, let's step up, let's make an example of myself on the pitch. And there just seems to be no spine at the moment.
I'm not sure I agree with all of that. I felt like some of the service into Mitrovic tonight was all right. I felt like we were getting crosses into the box, and he did have a few chances. It was certainly different type of service to the service he was getting in the Championship, when you had the likes of Knockaert and Cavallero just shooting all the time. I did feel like people were trying to pick him out, and I felt like on another day we could have scored some goals. But for me, it was just the problems at the other end that were our undoing. What about you, Will? Who for you is to blame for our just dismal performance at the back week in, week out at the moment?
I think I agree with Ben. I think it's coaching staff, manager, players, Tony Khan. I think it's a bit of everything. I think, like I said, the players just don't really know what they're doing, which is obviously players and coaching. And then I think Parker has a very, very limited amount of players that he can put out with the signings we brought in. Obviously, we've got a lot of midfielders, a lot of attackers. Defenders we are really, really short on, especially sending Mawson and Stephen Sessignon out on loan. But yeah, I think, it's just a bit of everyone for me. It's not good enough all round. And hopefully we can improve if we bring in another signing. Maybe even if he's not the best defender, someone that can boost morale, because there's no way Reem, Adoy and Hector are going to be happy playing the next game again after playing like that, especially considering it's against Wolves, who do have a better attack than Villa. They're not going to feel confident with Jimenez, Traore and Podence running at them, especially Traore. Have you seen the size of him? Imagine him against Brighton. He hasn't got a chance.
No, quite. Well, you two have got splinters in your arse and you both sat on the fence there and just kind of shared the blame out to everyone. And I get that. There is an argument to say that there's blame for Tony Khan, there's blame for the chairman, there's blame for the players, and there's blame for Scott Parker. But for me, it's the individual players that are making these errors. I think the way that we set up was all right tonight. As I said, we were getting forward quite nicely, but it's just individual mistakes, and they're happening every game at the moment, and it's got to stop. But I don't know how to make it stop, and Scott Parker's the only man who can, I think. Hopefully he'll have some new personnel to work with in the next few games, but whether they'll be good enough or not remains to be seen. Anyway, let's move on, and the second half begins. It gets worse immediately. We give away a free kick just inside our own half. There's no defending whatsoever. Everyone just stands there, and Tyrone Mings just strokes it home past the goalkeeper for 3-0. We just switched off and gave up again. I mean, I don't know what more there is to say about this. There's only so many times you can criticise one area of the pitch, but again, Ben, diabolical defending, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, things like mistakes like that shouldn't be happening in the Championship. That's the sort of thing you see in Sunday League when someone turns around and says, "Whose man was that?" as me and Will know from this weekend. But yeah, that shouldn't be happening. It's basic stuff, following your runners, and we just aren't doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, apparently it was a Doy that played them on side. I didn't actually see that, but that's just what someone said on WhatsApp or Twitter or something. But again, it's just no one's with him. I don't know. Just no one's marking him. No one. Again, it comes to the point. No one knows where they're supposed to be, because no one should be running through like that on side with no one next to him, because there's something going on where the players don't know what each other is supposed to be doing and what they're supposed to be doing themselves. So I think I'm starting to sway a lot more to the fact that it could be the coaching in some parts. I think it's also just confidence. Like I said before, there's no way those centre-backs are going to want to go back out on the pitch on the weekend and, have another performance like that, because it's embarrassing. But we'll have to see what happens. It's just not good enough at the moment, especially that goal. That was the worst of the night for me.
Yeah, that really was the worst goal of the night to concede. And I want to see our central defenders putting their bodies on the line, and they're not at the moment. They've got an easy ride, and it's not going to go on. They'll just be out of the team. Next, we get a goal. VAR ruins it. Bobby Reid scores, and then we have to have a few minutes whilst they check every possible scenario. And yeah, it gets ruled out. Much to Baldo's delight, because he's a big fan of VAR. I can't fucking stand it. I hate it. I hate everything about it, and I hate everything that's happened this weekend. But that's a conversation for another day. Then Maxime Le Marchand comes on for Hector, who slumps himself back down into his chair when he goes off and just looks. I don't know whether he's pissed off with being taken off or just pissed off with himself for playing so poorly. For you, Bobby Reid, was his goal ruled out incorrectly, or was it the right decision?
Yeah, I think it was the right decision. I think it was harsh. It definitely was harsh, but Mitrovic clearly fouled him. And as the commentator said, in the Premier League, in the Championship, he would have got away with that. And week in, week out, he did. He was always dragging players to the floor. You look at the playoff final when he choke slammed Marcondes. He choke slammed. And I said on the Leeds preview last week or the week before, we can't afford to have Mitrovic making mistakes like that, because he will get sent off and he will get goals disallowed, and he's got to learn quickly from this. We can't afford to have 4 or 5 goals ruled out when we're scoring hardly any either, and we're letting twice as many at the other end. We've got to improve really quickly in that aspect. Yeah,
that's a fair point. And we've already said, again, coming back to the defence, Ream and Adoy probably aren't good enough at this level. But Will, for you, is Michael Hector not stepping up in the last 3 games, or the first 3 games of this season, the biggest disappointment of all so far?
Yeah, for me, I think so. I think the only reason why I'd stick with him over Ream and Adoy is because we saw what he was capable of in the second half of last season. It was a massive impact when he came in, sort of like when Mitrovic came in for the second half of our first promotion season. It's kind of a bit like that. I feel like Hector had that impact, although on paper, he didn't score the goals. He didn't, maybe not as noticeable, but he really did change the season for us. And I think we know, that he can do it. We looked at him last season and we said, yeah, he's one of the players that we want to keep in the squad for next season. And we want to play a new centre-back alongside him. So for me, yeah, it's disappointing. But hopefully if a new centre-back comes in and we stick with a formation like 4 at the back, he knows where he's going to play. He knows who he's going to be playing alongside week in, week out. He knows how he plays. He knows how his teammate plays. And yeah, I think he will be good. But yeah, right now it's really disappointing to see. But even if Hector stepped up and was amazing, we still would have conceded goals and lost each of our first 3 matches. But yeah, like you say, it would be nice for him to step up to the challenge eventually.
He's just never played at this level before, and he's been knocking around Chelsea for a few years and been out on loan at several clubs over the years. He's done quite well at lower levels, but now this is his big chance, and he's blowing it at the moment. He really is blowing it, and I don't know whether it's just him that you can blame or whether it's some of the players around him as well, but he hasn't looked good. And, this could be his one and only opportunity to make it in the Premier League. So I really hope things turn around, both for his and for our sakes. 12 minutes to go. Niskans Cabano came on for Bobby Reid, probably the most pointless substitution ever made in the Premier League. I'm not quite sure what the thinking was behind that. One ineffective player at this level for another. But now we're left to pick up the pieces. What next? Where do we go from here? We've played two sides in the last couple of games who will likely finish mid-table to bottom half, and they've pissed all over us defensively. They've scored 7 goals past us. We've conceded 10 goals in 3 games. Ben, where do we go from here?
Just to put it into context, 10 goals in 3 games. We've got some stats here for you. Over the course of a season, to be fair, we haven't conceded the most goals. That's West Brom. They've conceded 11. But over the course of a season, 10 goals every 3 games. It's 126.6 goals over 38 games. To put that into context, the most ever is Derby, who conceded 89. And they finished on 11 points. So if we concede 126, it's just something's got to change. Whether Parker, he needs to learn quickly from his mistakes, and he will. I'm sure he will. In the Championship, he learned quickly. But can we afford to have 10, 15 games at the start of the season where he's learning? Because they didn't wait for Slav for that long, and Slav played some brilliant football. They just got rid of him. And I do feel if we lose the next couple of games, the Khans have got to make that decision. Do we stick or twist? And I'd stick. I said at the start of the season, no matter what, stay with him. Go down, come back up with him again. Like like other teams have done. They've stuck with their managers.
Yeah,
Burnley. Was it Burnley?
Did that.
Burnley, yeah. And like they've come back up and they've established themselves now. But it's not been easy for Parker. Tony Khan's got to pull his finger out. I know he put a message on Twitter saying we've been struggling. We had 4 centre backs ruled out, but he's a director of football. These mistakes, these problems are going to come up, and he's going to have to solve them. And maybe that's the difference between a Premier League team and a Championship team, having the players and the managers who can sort of solve these issues as they pop up.
We did a podcast after we got promoted at Wembley where everybody was saying, Scott Parker, he's come of age, he's this, he's that, he's the other. It'd be really harsh if he doesn't get the whole season. And then Danny stepped in and said, yeah, but if he loses X amount of games in a row, then everyone's going to want him to go. And you just wonder where that point is. I mean, I'm going to stick to my guns and I'm going to back him for the whole season because I think he deserves that. And I'm not one for chopping and changing. And I'd rather buy into a project with a manager and just stand by the decision to hang on to a manager. But if we're getting thrashed every week and we're not ever picking up any points, then that's gonna be really hard. Will, what about you? Where do we go from here for you?
We just need a centre-back. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I know it's repeated everywhere on Twitter, on other Fulham podcasts, on this podcast. We just need a centre-back big time because this is the Premier League. This is the top league in England. And we're still playing Tim Ream and Dennis Odoi, who, like I say, they've been great for the club. But they're both, 32 and 33, I think? Maybe something. Both over 32, I think. And it's just, obviously, players can get good at that age and can peak at that age, but they definitely haven't. And I think we just need to, it's just a centre-back before the end of the window, and I think I'll be content going forward from there. On the Parker issue, I said at the start of the season that I'll stick with him the whole season. I feel like I am probably one of those people who say that, and then if we go and lose 10 in a row, I'll change my mind. But I don't want to be that person. But I definitely could end up being like that. But I think it's sensible to keep him, and if we do go down with him and treat it like a long-term project. Because, Ben, like you say, with Burnley, it's a long-term thing. They've kept Sean Dyche for a long time now, and they're an established Premier League club. Admittedly, they've never really done, finished top 6, top 8, really. But they're mid-table most seasons now. And I think that's the way forward for us. We need to stick. We need to get a philosophy around the club and a set kind of target, which we can't set targets when we're changing managers every 6 months. That's not going to work. And especially the way the Khans do things with the director of football about how they're mostly involved in the transfers, it seems that Tony Khan does get along well with Parker. So I think keeping Parker can only be a positive, surely. And hopefully it pays off eventually if we do stick with him, which is what I'd like to do.
Now, something that Robin said in the chat earlier, and I know people listening to the show won't know Robin, but Robin's heavily involved behind the scenes with Fulham Focus, is that the problem we've got with trying to sign a centre-half, aside from the fact that nobody worth their salt is going to want to come at the moment, is that we're trying to sign ball-playing centre-halves, and what we need in the position we're in is something a bit different to that. We need a bit of a thug at the back who doesn't mind sticking their boot in, sticking their face in, rather than somebody who can just play the ball out from the back. I don't know who there is available who fits that bill, but I think he's right. I think trying to play the ball out from the back and having a ball-playing centre-half is playing into the hands of relegation, quite frankly. Ben, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you look at how often the players ball-playing centre-halves who are big, strong, and like sticking their head in the way. I can only think of Company. Typically these players who are the best at what they do, passing the ball from the back and defending, they're not going to be thugs. And that's sort of what we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. We need a player who's going to come in, show up the defence. Look at last season when Hector came in. That change in that our entire confidence in our defence changed just because of one new signing, and that could happen this season. But by January it could be too late. And I think, like someone else mentioned in the team chat earlier, the best ball playing centre halves who are going to improve us are going to be playing in Europe. They're not going to come to lower half Premier League teams, and they'll have been scouted by Everton. That centre back Todibo from Barca, and Everton have sort of hijacked that. And no player is going to say, "Well, I could fight for my place at Everton, or I could be guaranteed to start at Fulham." No, that's not you go to Everton. There's not a choice there. We're not an established mid-table Premier League team anymore, and until we are, we're not going to be able to get players like that in. And I think it's something it's going to be a few tough seasons before we start getting nice players in from abroad again.
You're completely right, and that's what Tony Khan's up against. And unless he can work an absolute miracle and pull off some amazing deal, then he's gonna be getting a load of stick from people on Twitter. So if I was Tony Khan, and I don't expect him to take my advice at all, why would he? But if I was Tony Khan, I'd just get rid of my Twitter account, because that Twitter account does him absolutely no favours. He doesn't have to talk to the official website about what business they're doing and what business they plan to do. He does that, and I think he comes across quite well. I think he comes across as a decent bloke, and I think the stick, just because some Fulham supporters and football supporters are frustrated with how the team's doing, I think the stick that he gets is completely unjust, and I do feel sorry for him. We'll get in a central defender or two before next week's transfer deadline day, undoubtedly. You just need to be a bit patient. But if you're expecting that central defender to come in and completely change the landscape of this team, then you're asking for a miracle, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I mean, I've just seen someone's just sent this a tweet on the team chat. So Parker said on transfers, Parker was talking about transfers, and he said, we need to work out whether we want to compete this year. Otherwise, it will be a tough year. This team needs to evolve, and to do that, we need players in. If not, we will work like we have worked and try and improve things. So to me, that sounds like he's kind of sending a message to Tony Khan, and not just through a text message through the media, which I think is a bit of a, sending a bigger message saying that we need a centre back. Otherwise, we're working with what we've got here, and you've already seen what that's like. So I think that's interesting. I know I said earlier that Parker does seem heavily involved with the transfers with Tony Khan, but I think this is hopefully going to get his message across, and hopefully it doesn't mean they're going to fall out. I think that's just saying to Tony, look, we got to do something. We got to do something fast, because we both want what's best for the club, and that's bringing in a centre back, because we need to compete with the top teams.
Well, let's just concentrate on competing with 4 or 5 teams at the bottom of the league before we try and start competing with the top teams. But yeah, point taken. Yeah, that's nicely put. Well, let's come on to Scott Parker then. Let's do a Scott Parker rating. Ben, I'm going to come to you first. Out of 10 for Scott Parker.
2 for me. Maybe a push. I'd give him a 3. But it just to not go with the normal formation. It seems a bit odd. I don't know if it was. I remember Slav a few years ago. He did it where he tried to prove a point to Tony Khan by putting out a mental team. And is it the same sort of thing again, where he's trying to say, "Look, we need these players. This is what I want to play. Give me the players I need." But yeah, 2 for me.
All right, mate. And what about you, Will?
I think I'll probably go for like a 4. I think, like you say, formation was interesting, but there's just something not going right. I mean, I'm not giving a 4 just for this match. I'm giving it for the training leading up to this match because there's something not right. Again, this is like the third time I've said it just in this podcast. Like, the players don't know what they're doing. They're not being trained to play with each other, let alone well with each other. It's just something's not right. I think keeping Anguissa in the team's a good call. Yeah, that's about as much as I can go to, really. Everyone else has kind of had their position set anyway that is guaranteed to make the team. But yeah, it's just a 4 for me. We'll have to see whether that improves over the season. Hopefully it does. But this match really was not the one. And the training leading up to it, I suppose, just caused that, really.
Okay, I'm going to go with a 5. And that's just because I thought we looked quite dangerous going forward. Even though we didn't score, I felt like we did create a lot of good opportunities. We had some good possession in some good areas. And it was just those frustrating lapses at key points in the game that cost us 3 goals. So, I'm going to go with a 5 and really hope that something changes between now and the Wolves game on Sunday. All right, lads, let's leave it there. J-Mac will be back for a review of the Wolves game on Monday morning, and I only hope something magical happens between now and then. Thanks for listening, everyone, and speak to you soon. Cheers.